Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. As I always say, or always when it fits, let's put it this way, in order to figure out if a behavior or a policy, a law is just, you have to start at least asking two questions. One, is that policy or action, behavior considered okay across the board? And if that policy or law is, you consider it as being just when you put yourself at the receiving end of that law. And believe me, when you're about to be put at the receiving end, you're going to see a lot of problems with the policies. We're going to say, well, if you do that, that's not just. If you do that, it's not just. So those two are actually coming to the same umbrella, wanting to be impartial, and it's universal. It's not only for this group or that person or that ideology. We have here an article where this is probably, I'm assuming, hailed as a positive thing and nothing to see here wrong. Well, I can point out that this little article and the title, obviously, reminds me of the developments in Russia prior to February 24th, 2022. And you know probably exactly what I'm talking about. So, NATO to accelerate deployment of up to 300,000 soldiers on eastern border. And as towards Russia. Do you remember when the Russians deployed their armies on their territory bordering not NATO, Ukraine? Do you remember how hysterical the Western media was about those troops? I do, and I hope you do the same thing. So this is a good thing, and the other one was a bad thing. And we're going to discuss here why, why this could be interpreted both ways. It depends on who looks at them and how you called these guys or the Russians. If NATO is good, obviously this is a fantastic thing. Now, if Russia would be good, but we know it's bad, right? Then that would be a bad thing when they brought their troops. And then you have to look at the reason. Okay, why did the Russians bring their troops over there? And why did NATO bring its troops where it brings it? And see what's going on. All right, so let's see. In the coming months, NATO will intensify its efforts to concentrate weapons along the eastern border of the alliance. You see how the alliance now, it has a border. You gotta pay attention to these guys. Little by little, NATO will be a country, and it's already under the control of the United States of America, and they call it now a border. Just to see how they creep little terms in to tell you that actually there is a one unit with one boss, which is the United States of America. Why? Because just think about how many troops the European countries have on the territory of the United States of America defending the western border of NATO, which is California, Oregon, state of Washington. Not many. Okay, defend it from the evil Russians that are on the other side, right? Or let's say in Alaska, how many do they have? Zero. And then the Chinese are over there, and they're very, very, very dangerous. So, and to allocate tens of thousands of soldiers who can go to help allies at any moment's notice. So, very good. I mean, that's a very good decision. I don't see what's the problem if you look at it that way. But then you see the problem with the Russians putting their troops at the border of Ukraine. And you say, okay, why did NATO place or will place 300,000 soldiers at the border with Russia? Well, obviously is because of the threat Russia poses to the border alliance, right? Correct, right? So NATO is concerned with its security, and it sees Russia as the aggressor and the enemy, correct? Correct. Well, remember how I started this video. I mean, if we are to be just, let's see if the thing fits the other food, shoe, wa, we, who. So if it fits, if we put it on the Russian, from a Russian angle. Okay, well, Russia said that NATO is a threat to to its country, to Russia, right? Are they entitled to say that? Well, NATO is, Russia is. If you might say, well, wait a second, based on what Russia considers NATO, would consider the fantastic, perfect, ideal defense organization as a threat. All right, let's blow that up. I will remind you of Yugoslavia bombardment by NATO. Is that good enough? If you don't know anything about it, obviously you will not take it into consideration, which I suggest you do a few clicks. And for you who I know you know about it, let's move on. You can look at Iraq, again, NATO was implicated, or countries from NATO. Then you can look at Syria, and you can look at Libya, and many other locations like, I don't know, Afghanistan. So NATO could be a big threat considered, okay? And that's basically a subjective feeling when you feel a threat. You feel threatened by someone is based on your subjective interpretation of reality. So if NATO can have I would say good reasons seeing Russia going into Ukraine, well, Russia could have the same thing looking at those examples I just mentioned. So that's blown up. So Russia could have a legitimate concern for its security with NATO moving towards its territory. We agree with that? We don't, we're going to go forward anyway. So then the Russians, what did the Russians do? They spoke with the guys in charge of NATO and said, well, these are our concerns with you guys coming over, Red Rover. What these guys said, well, we're not going to talk to you. Your concerns are not legitimate. We're not going to talk to you. Okay, well, now the Russians said, well, you didn't consider it legitimate. We consider it legitimate. We're going to act. And NATO was finally. So they acted, they did what they did in Ukraine. NATO, which has nothing to do with Ukraine, which Ukraine is not part of the NATO, is not in the borders of NATO, thought, oh my God, this is a threat to us. Perceived threat? Yes. Russia did not say it's going to attack NATO, right? But hey, subjective interpretation of reality. I feel threatened by you invading Ukraine, and we have to help and support Ukraine as long as it takes to defend you because we feel threatened. We don't want you to come over here, which they do. So you see, if you consider the guy over here a threat, and that guy disconsiders your concerns that you try to discuss, but he is somehow legitimate in having his concerns. Remember, Russia did not move westward. It was NATO who moved the border westward, eastward. I'm sorry. So these guys are going to put 300,000 people. Now, those 300,000 people, I'm assuming they're going to be a lot of Americans over there on the European countries. Well, you can look at them, helping you, protecting you, and all that. Only if you consider those countries that bring their troops on your territory as good countries, your allies, your friends. But remember, history teaches us many lessons where you have countries with this kind of situation, and then they have a little regime change, a little bit. They don't want to leave, like look in Germany as an example, look Japan as an example. There are American troops on those independent sovereign countries still after 1949. Just a reminder when we are in 2023. And you know why they're over there, the troops, the American troops? To defend, to protect. And the Japanese and the Germans want that, okay? They're not doing anything, but they have a good heart, big heart, and they will defend them from the threat. Who's the threat? Russia and China. So again, we get the same subjective feeling of I feel my security threatened by your presence. Let's discuss it. Let's de-escalate. But this guy said, no, we don't have nothing to talk to you. Go ahead. And they did. So what should happen right now? My concern is an escalation. I think it's just a weasel way of looking at things when you think that only you have security concerns but nobody else. And the third one is the occupation. The occupation of troops over there. That's one of the concerns, that your sovereignty, the borders and so on. If it's not clear for everyone that we have here an organization that tries to impose certain things with armed forces, economically first, politically first, economically second, militarily third. I mean, I don't know, maybe give me about $20,000 now and I'm going to give it to you back tomorrow with an interest of 3,000%. And we'll meet tomorrow, guaranteed. You wouldn't do that. So why wouldn't the hell you would believe these things? Well, just because some people lose reason when they have a heart that doesn't want to allow this to function properly. People think with pathos instead of logos. We all do that, but we can't let this get ahead of this. We sometimes do, and then we get burned, don't we? Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.